The war in Italy had dragged on far longer than anyone expected. By the winter of 1944, the Allied advance north from Naples had stalled before the mountainous terrain of the Apennines. Snow blanketed the ridgelines, German machine guns watched every valley, and even mules struggled to carry supplies up the muddy switchbacks. In this frozen stalemate, a small band of men prepared for a mission so secret that no written record of its full plan survives. They were members of the British Special Air Service, the legendary SAS, and by dawn, they would vanish into the fog near Bologna, never to be seen alive again. The operation's official codename was never disclosed to the public, though later declassified fragments call it Operation Thistledown. The mission brief, according to post-war accounts, was deceptively simple. Infiltrate enemy territory north of Florence, locate a key German supply route, and disrupt an upcoming movement of high-value transport. But there was more beneath the surface. One officer's diary entry, recovered decades later from a faded leather notebook, read, "If we pull this off, the whole front shifts overnight." The 2nd SAS Regiment had already proven its worth in North Africa, raiding airfields, destroying supply dumps, and vanishing into the desert. Now they were in Italy, fighting a different kind of war. Ambushes in forests, patrols through villages under curfew, and covert collaboration with Italian partisans. Their commander for this mission, Major Thomas Maine, was a veteran of Tobruk, a quiet, methodical officer who trusted his men implicitly but questioned the motives behind some higher-level orders. The intelligence handed to him by HQ seemed oddly specific, too specific for a routine raid. The SAS detachment comprised just 12 men, armed with suppressed Sten guns, demolition charges, and Fairbairn Sykes fighting knives. They moved light and fast, carrying only what they could haul on their backs. On February 13, 1944, they slipped away from a temporary Allied camp near Imola. Their Italian guides led them along goat trails under moonlight, past burnt-out farmhouses and mine-strewn roads. Every sound seemed amplified in the cold air: the click of a rifle bolt, the rustle of their camouflage smocks, the distant echo of artillery. By the second night, radio contact was cut. This wasn't unusual. Mountain interference often disrupted wireless signals, but when no transmission came by the third day, headquarters began to worry. Their silence was expected. One intelligence officer later wrote in his report, "Just not this long." The patrol's orders were to observe a convoy believed to carry field maps and encrypted communications for the 16th SS Panzer Grenadiers defending the Gothic line. But no one in the SAS detachment could know the true significance of those documents or the political games being played in London and Rome at the time. Major Maine's men kept to the shadows, sleeping in haylofts and barns offered by sympathetic villagers. The locals called them I Phantasmi, the ghosts, because they appeared suddenly armed to the teeth and then disappeared again before dawn. One elderly farmer later recalled to a British historian, "They were polite, always polite, but you could see in their eyes, they knew this mission was different." The men spoke little, conserving breath and energy for what lay ahead. The terrain itself was a formidable enemy. February rains turned mountain paths into streams of mud. Weapons jammed, boots rotted. Each day, they climbed higher, toward a narrow valley where German convoys routinely passed on their way to the front. According to intercepted radio traffic, one particular movement, scheduled for February 16th, carried sensitive materials from the German 10th Army headquarters in Bologna. Whether those materials were codebooks, maps, or even diplomatic papers remains unclear. That night, the patrol reached a ridgeline overlooking the main road. The plan was simple but perilous: set demolition charges on a narrow bend, wait for the convoy, then strike and retreat before dawn. The partisans promised diversionary fires to the west to draw German patrols away. Everything depended on precision, timing, and silence. Before setting the charges, Sergeant John McAllister, one of the most seasoned NCOs, scribbled a final line in his pocket diary: "We're ghosts in their valley now. If they find us, no one will ever know what we were really after." Those words would be the last trace of the patrol's existence for decades. At 0300 hours, under heavy mist and biting wind, Major Maine gave the silent signal to move. 12 shadows crept down toward the road, their boots sinking into the wet soil, explosives slung across their backs. Moments later, the first faint rumble of engines echoed through the valley. Headlights appeared, then vanished, then reappeared again as the convoy turned a bend. Then, suddenly, silence. The patrol's forward observer raised his hand to detonate the charges, but before he could, the mist thickened, swallowing the entire scene. When dawn broke over the Apennines, there was no explosion, no radio signal, no trace of the SAS patrol. Allied intercepts picked up only a single German transmission around 0600 hours, Ambush reported. Heavy losses. Pursuing enemy irregulars north of Castel del Rio. What happened between that moment and the patrol's disappearance remains one of the lesser-known mysteries of the Italian campaign. The official record lists them as missing in action. Yet decades later, fragments of their equipment, such as dagger, a broken radio, a notebook with 3 torn pages, will be discovered buried near a collapsed farmhouse. Were they ambushed before setting their charges? Did they engage the convoy and perish in the counterattack? Or, as some historians suggest, did they uncover something that was never meant to be found? The answers, buried somewhere in the snow-covered hills of northern Italy, would not begin to surface until long after the war ended. And that is where our story truly begins. By February 17, 1944, British headquarters in Italy had a problem. The 2nd SAS Patrol, Major Main's men, had been silent for 4 days. Radio operators at the Allied forward base near Imola kept trying the same encrypted frequency, but only static replied. At first, it was routine, bad terrain, faulty radio valves. But when a coded request for resupply went unanswered and no rendezvous signal was received, the mission that had begun as a simple ambush turned into an unfolding mystery. The order to send the patrol had come directly from Allied Force headquarters in Naples, not from Field Command. That was unusual. Normally, small unit raids were coordinated with the 8th Army's Intelligence Branch, or SOE liaisons. This one bypassed both. As one war diary later noted, Operation Thistledown bore the fingerprints of London, high clearance, limited disclosure, and zero paper trail. To the officers still waiting for news, the silence was as alarming as it was telling. Meanwhile, the men of Major Main's detachment were deep behind enemy lines. Drawing on their North African experience, they had planned every detail of their ambush. Their target was a German convoy moving along Route 652 near Castel del Rio, a twisting road carved into the Apennine slopes, where heavy trucks could be easily trapped by landslides or demolition. The convoy was rumored to be carrying field intelligence for the 16th SS Panzergrenadier Division, data that could reveal German movements along the Gothic line defenses. For the SAS, this wasn't just about destroying supplies, it was about altering the tempo of the entire Italian campaign. If the Allies could confirm German redeployment toward Bologna, they might launch a flanking assault before spring. That meant lives saved, possibly months cut from the campaign. But the price of discovery would be death. The 12-man patrol included some of the SAS' finest veterans. Sergeant McAllister had earned a military medal for a raid on Benghazi. Corporal Jock Hensley, a demolitions expert, had survived being captured and escaping from Tobruk. And their Italian guide, Pietro Arduini, a partisan from Imola, had been smuggling refugees and intelligence for months. They were quiet, disciplined, Arduini later recalled in a 1958 interview. Not like commandos in the films. They didn't boast. They only looked at the map, checked the road, and asked for silence. The challenge wasn't courage, it was survival. The men faced freezing rain, flooded creeks, and constant patrols from the Hermann Göring Division, which had been deployed to protect the supply roads. They carried minimal equipment, just their weapons, demolition charges, and one No. 18 wireless set. Each man bore roughly 50 pounds of gear, yet they had to move fast and leave no trace. One misplaced footprint in the snow could mean betrayal. By the night of February 15th, they reached their designated strike point overlooking a sharp bend in the road. Using captured German explosives, they prepared shaped charges to target the lead and rear vehicles of the convoy, standard AS procedure to trap the rest in between. Hensley's last recorded words, from a notebook recovered decades later, read, "Road's slick, but timing's perfect. If the schedule holds, this could be over in under 3 minutes." But the schedule did not hold. At dawn, dense fog rolled into the valley, reducing visibility to a few yards. The convoy, delayed by snow and mechanical failures, didn't appear when expected. Maine ordered the men to hold position and conserve rations. Hours turned into a full day. In their exposed position, every moment risked discovery. German radio intercepts later confirmed increased reconnaissance patrols in the same sector, perhaps tipped off, perhaps coincidence. Then came the signal they'd been waiting for, the distant rumble of engines. But the convoy wasn't alone. It was preceded by 2 armored cars, an escort not mentioned in any intelligence briefing. The SAS team adjusted quickly, repositioning their detonators and suppressors. The plan would still work, but timing would now be critical. At 2:47 on February 16th, the charges were set. Maine gave the hand signal. The men crouched low, watching through the mist. The first lorry appeared, headlights dimmed, its silhouette wavering in the fog. Behind it, another truck and another. 12 in total. The convoy slowed near the bend. The moment had come. Then, from the ridge above, a flare burst, bright, white, unmistakably German. Someone had betrayed them. Machine gun fire tore through the trees. The first truck exploded prematurely, lighting the valley in flame. As troopers returned fire, silenced one gun nest, and tried to retreat uphill, but more enemy units were closing in fast. WWII, the partisan guide, was hit in the leg and dragged behind a rock. He would later tell an Allied interrogator, "They didn't panic. They fought like ghosts." But the hills were full of Germans. When the shooting stopped, the valley fell silent. The flames died slowly, leaving only the wreck of the lead truck. By sunrise, German patrols reported no enemy prisoners found. No bodies were recovered, no weapons, no signs of a retreat path. Only a smoldering crater and scattered shrapnel remained. Back at HQ, the disappearance was quietly noted and just as quietly forgotten. Official records list the patrol as missing, presumed killed. Yet, weeks later, Allied intelligence would intercept a German field report mentioning enemy saboteurs captured alive near Castel del Rio. No names, no numbers, just a cryptic line buried in routine correspondence. So what happened after that firefight in the fog? Were the missing SAS men dead or taken alive for interrogation? And if captured, what might they have revealed or discovered before they vanished from history? Those questions would haunt investigators for years to come, leading to discoveries that blur the line between mission failure and hidden success. The morning after the ambush at Castel del Rio, German patrols scoured the valley for survivors. What they found instead were fragments of equipment, burned webbing, spent shell casings, and the blackened wreck of a truck that had clearly been carrying more than just fuel. The explosion had gutted the vehicle, scattering scorched papers into the trees. Yet, amid the debris, one item stood out, a British-issue map case, half buried in mud. It was empty. Italian civilians in nearby hamlets heard the battle before dawn. Some described it as a storm that came from nowhere. Others, especially partisan fighters familiar with Allied raids, guessed the truth immediately. One local, Maria Lazzarini, later told British investigators, "We knew it was the English. You could hear the way they fired, not in bursts, but controlled, precise." Then, all at once, silence. That silence lingered for days. Unaware of what had truly happened, Allied headquarters in Imola listed the patrol as missing in action. But rumors began to circulate among the partisans. Rumors of an ambush gone wrong, and of captured British soldiers being moved north under heavy guard. What was strange, though, was the German response. Instead of boasting about repelling a sabotage attempt, the Wehrmacht sealed off the entire area and banned civilians from entering. Even German engineers sent to clear the wreckage were ordered not to touch truck number 3. That order, preserved in German army archives decades later, hinted at a deeper mystery. Truck number 3 was not part of any regular supply convoy. It carried documents marked Oberkommando Südwest, a designation used only for senior staff of Army Group C, under Field Marshal Albert Kesselring. Among these papers, it was later learned, were preliminary plans for a partial German withdrawal from sections of the Gothic Line, plans that had never been formally issued. If those documents were indeed lost in the explosion, the implications were enormous. The ambush, though fatal for the SAS, might have delayed a strategic repositioning by weeks, forcing the Germans to hold their lines longer and giving the Allies time to regroup for their spring offensive. But that was speculation. In the fog of war, nothing was ever certain. Meanwhile, strange reports filtered through partisan channels. One resistance fighter claimed to have seen German troops escorting 2 prisoners, both in British uniforms, toward a fortified villa outside Castel del Rio. Another mentioned hearing a captured soldier shouting, "Tell them it wasn't supposed to be this way." These accounts were dismissed by Allied intelligence at the time as unverified civilian hearsay. Yet years later, when British investigators reopened the case, they found that the villa in question had indeed been used by the 16th SS Panzer Grenadiers as an interrogation site. What exactly happened inside that villa remains unknown. German records from February 1944 make a brief reference to foreign agents detained and transferred for questioning. No follow-up entries exist. No execution orders. No Red Cross notifications. The prisoners, whoever they were, vanished completely. By spring, Allied troops had advanced past the region. Castel del Rio was liberated in April 1945, and with it came the grim task of recovering the dead. Graves registration units found dozens of bodies, German, partisan, and civilian, but none identified as SAS. A single dog tag engraved Main T was found near the ruins of a farmhouse, but experts later determined it was a duplicate tag often carried as a decoy. For the families of the missing men, closure never came. Major Main's wife received a brief telegram, missing in action, presumed dead, nothing more. But whispers persisted among veterans. One former intelligence officer from the 8th Army, writing in his memoir, claimed, "I saw the post-action intercepts. The Germans were after something bigger than an ambush. Those men walked into a meeting that wasn't meant for them." In time, Operation Thistledown faded from official memory, overshadowed by larger battles like Monte Cassino and Anzio. But among the few who knew of it, the silence surrounding the mission was deafening. The paperwork was thin, the signals traffic incomplete, and the after-action files redacted almost entirely. What was being hidden? One clue emerged years later in the personal effects of a German intelligence officer named Hauptmann Rudolf Meinhardt, captured in 1945. Among his documents was a faded photograph of a valley road, with a handwritten note on the back, "English Saboteur, 16 February 1944. Alice Verschwunden." Translation, English Saboteurs, February 16, 1944. All gone, all gone. Those words summed up the entire operation. Were they killed instantly? Captured and executed in secret? Or, as some have theorized, were they taken for interrogation and later used as bargaining chips in negotiations we still don't fully understand? As the war ground on and Italy bled through another brutal spring, one fact remained. The SAS patrol at Castel del Rio had struck a blow that echoed far beyond that frozen valley. Yet their story, buried in classified files and half-burned reports, was only beginning to reveal its true shape. The next chapter would bring a chilling discovery, one that turned this failed ambush into one of the most puzzling episodes of the Italian campaign. Weeks passed after the ambush, and the mystery of the missing SAS patrol deepened. Allied intelligence had begun piecing together fragments of information intercepted from German communications, but what emerged was puzzling. One coded message intercepted on February 22 mentioned 2 enemy officers detained, transferred to secure location, with no further explanation. There were no names, no unit designations, just a confirmation that someone had survived the initial engagement. In late February, a breakthrough came through partisan networks. Pietro Arduini, the Italian guide who had been wounded during the ambush, revealed that he had seen German soldiers escorting British prisoners toward a villa high in the Apennines, now abandoned and partially destroyed. According to his account, the soldiers carried papers and maps, documents that didn't belong to ordinary supply convoys. He swore he overheard the Germans speaking of strategic intelligence being recovered intact. If Arduini's story was correct, Major Main and at least one of his men had survived the firefight, only to be captured. Back in London, MI9, responsible for aiding escape and evasion operations, began investigating inconsistencies in the mission file. Some orders were missing entirely, replaced with redacted forms. Other pages were clearly altered post facto. One intelligence officer noted, "It is as if the patrol existed only to be erased from the record." The lesson was stark. Wartime secrecy often obscured the truth, even from those within Allied command. Further evidence emerged in 1947 when British investigators examined German post-war archives. Among them were interrogation notes from the 16th SS Panzer Grenadiers indicating that 2 English officers had been taken prisoner on February 16 near Castel del Rio. The notes described the men as disciplined, resourceful, and unusually knowledgeable about German troop movements. They reportedly demanded the Germans disclose their chain of command before providing any information, a bold act that may have cost them their freedom. This revelation suggested that the convoy the SAS had ambushed carried far more than field supplies. It may have transported operational maps detailing planned German withdrawals. If so, the patrol had disrupted a major redeployment, delaying German maneuvers and indirectly aiding the Allied spring offensive. Yet, the exact contents of the convoy remained unverified, leaving historians to speculate on the strategic impact. Arduini's account and the German notes combined to form a chilling image. The patrol had been effective, but at a tremendous cost. Their disappearance was no accident. It was part of the fog of covert warfare, where success and sacrifice were inseparable. In a diary recovered decades later, one German officer reflected, "They fought with skill, yet were swallowed by the valley." Their capture may have been the only way to recover what we had lost. The modern relevance of these events is clear. In clandestine operations, intelligence can be more valuable than lives or equipment. The lessons learned by the SAS and the Apennines echo today in Special Operations Doctrine. Risk is measured not just by enemy fire, but by what secrets are at stake and how far one is willing to go to secure them. The ultimate fate of the patrol, however, remained unresolved. Despite the documents, interviews, and diaries, no definitive record of their final hours existed. Were they executed, moved elsewhere, or perhaps hidden in a secret transfer that even German command could not trace fully? This lingering uncertainty cast a shadow over Operation Thistledown and turned a daring mission into one of the Italian campaign's greatest enigmas. As Allied forces prepared for the spring offensive and the Gothic line battles loomed, the mystery of the SAS patrol hung over northern Italy like a winter fog, silent, cold, and impenetrable. And yet, somewhere in the mountains, the echoes of their ambush continued to shape events in ways that few living participants would ever understand. By late 1944, the Italian campaign had shifted into a brutal war of attrition. The Allies pushed steadily north, inching toward the Gothic line, while the mountains still held secrets few dared to explore. Among those secrets was the disappearance of Major Maine and his men. As the months passed, MI9 and other Allied intelligence branches began reviewing the files from Operation Thistledown with a new level of scrutiny, uncovering discrepancies that suggested the mission's outcome had been intentionally obscured. Orders had been rewritten, redacted, or removed entirely. The official patrol report noted the ambush as engagement incomplete, patrol missing, but supporting documents referenced cryptic codes like operation concluded successfully and all objectives nominal. Investigators later discovered that these notes were inserted weeks after the fact, raising the question, was the operation a failure, a cover, or a carefully orchestrated diversion? Some historians suggest that higher command may have known the convoy carried sensitive intelligence and deliberately concealed the patrol's fate to protect the larger Allied strategy. Evidence of deliberate secrecy extended to the intelligence recovered from German archives. A coded German dispatch marked top secret referred to foreign saboteurs neutralized without clarification. Allied decrypts interpreted neutralized ambiguously. It could mean killed, captured, or quietly transferred. This language echoed throughout both Allied and German post-war records, leaving historians with only fragmented clues about the patrol's final movements. One tantalizing discovery came from a surviving SAS operative, interviewed in 1952. He claimed that a brief, unsigned field report mentioned the patrol delivering vital intelligence before vanishing. "We never knew if they made it," he said, "but there were whispers of maps and orders intercepted that never reached our hands." These hints fueled speculation that the patrol had accomplished part of its mission but had been captured or concealed for political reasons, possibly to prevent leaks of highly sensitive operational intelligence. The hidden dimension of the mission raises questions about wartime priorities. Sacrifice, strategy, and secrecy collided in the Apennines. What was the cost of success, and who bore responsibility for the loss of life? The SAS men had operated in the shadow of these calculations, their bravery recorded only in fragments, diary notes, scavenged equipment, and the occasional testimony of partisan allies. For modern audiences, the story illustrates a sobering truth. In special operations, what appears to be failure may mask strategic impact, and what seems like success may carry costs that are never fully acknowledged. Intelligence, timing, and human endurance are intertwined in ways that make every decision a potential historical pivot. By the end of 1944, even as the Allies pressed toward Bologna, the mystery of the SAS patrol remained unsolved. Were the men killed in the ambush, captured and executed, or used as unrecorded bargaining tools? The lack of clarity left a shadow over Operation Thistledown, emphasizing how much of wartime history is determined not just by battles won or lost, but by information that remains hidden for decades. As the Allies planned their spring offensive, a quiet question lingered among surviving intelligence officers. If the patrol had survived longer than anyone realized, could their disappearance have been part of a broader covert operation that shaped the Italian front in ways still unknown? The answer remained buried, as silent and impenetrable as the snow-covered valleys of Castel del Rio. Spring of 1945 brought the final push through northern Italy, but the mystery of the missing SAS patrol still loomed over the Apennines. Allied troops advanced past Castel del Rio, uncovering the ruins of bombed-out farmhouses and abandoned German positions. Investigators searched the valleys and ridgelines for any trace of Major Maine and his men. What they found, however, was fragmentary: a single SS dagger, scorched pages from a notebook, and the remnants of demolition charges, enough to confirm the patrol had reached the ambush site, but nothing to explain their ultimate fate. Post-war efforts by MI9 and British intelligence pieced together what little could be reconstructed from German and partisan sources. A handful of reports suggested that at least 2 men had been taken prisoner after the firefight, interrogated about the convoy, and then moved to an unknown location. Yet no Red Cross records or camp logs ever documented them. A surviving German officer's notes cryptically stated, "The English operatives were spirited away, no trace to leave." Scholars and historians have debated ever since whether the patrol was executed, absorbed into another covert operation, or deliberately concealed to protect sensitive intelligence. The broader significance of Operation Thistledown gradually emerged. Intercepted German communications and recovered documents indicated that the convoy the SAS had targeted may have contained maps and orders revealing German strategic withdrawals. If so, the ambush, even if partially unsuccessful, delayed German maneuvers and gave the Allies precious days to reorganize for the spring offensive. In effect, this SAS patrol may have shaped the Italian campaign without ever returning to report their actions. For the families of the missing men, closure never came. Personal letters, photographs, and diaries preserved the memory of their courage, but questions remained. Did Major Maine and his men die in combat, or were they quietly removed from history to protect a larger plan? Was their disappearance a tragic consequence of war, or part of a deliberate intelligence operation so secret that even post-war investigators could only speculate? Modern military analysts reflect on the lessons of Thistledown. Small, highly trained units can alter the course of a campaign, yet their sacrifices may remain hidden. Strategic objectives sometimes demand secrecy over recognition, and intelligence operations may obscure the line between success and tragedy. The operation underscores how war is fought not only on the battlefield but in the shadows, where few witnesses remain to tell the story. Today, the valley near Castel del Rio is peaceful, its roads quiet, its mountains green once again. Yet the echoes of February 16, 1944 linger, ghostly reminders of courage, risk, and the unresolved fates of 12 men who vanished behind enemy lines. Historians continue to puzzle over the fragments, and the mystery endures. Major Maine and his men changed the course of the Italian campaign, yet no one knows exactly how or what became of them. Operation Thistledown remains one of the most enigmatic chapters of the Second World War, a story of daring, disappearance, and the silent weight of secrets that shaped history without leaving a clear witness behind. The Apennines hold their secrets still, and the legend of the SAS ambush continues to fascinate those who seek to understand the shadowed edges of wartime heroism.